Hi, everyone. So I think we can start this summit today. We have three exceptional speakers with us today, but before we start to investigate what are the applications of AI in agriculture, then I'll welcome Ingrid to go us through an introduction of Stockholm AI and a couple of things before we start. Ingrid, hi. You can share your video and I will share the screen.
Yes, hello. Thanks for the introduction and thanks for organizing, Martha. I'll see if I can get my video started as well. Hello.
We can see you.
Excellent. Sorry, the screen disappeared. So yeah, so my name is Ingrid and I'm the vice chair of Stockholm AI, and I'm super thrilled to have this Agri-tech meetup coming off today. So if I'll just do a brief introduction of Stockholm AI, and then Martha can introduce the speakers, and then we'll hit the ground running. So if you take the next slide. Yeah, so basically Stockholm AI started as a meetup originally, but it was formalized in 2017 as a nonprofit. And we're acting as a platform for knowledge exchange between experts in different fields of AI. So basically AI and machine learning professionals, data scientists, data enthusiasts, etc. And we're over 3,000 members on Facebook now, so we've grown quite rapidly the past years. And I'd say our community is approximately 50% professionals and like 20% researchers, about 15% students, 12% sort of hobbyists, and 3% other, if you will. If you can take the next slide. Yeah, so basically we are really dedicated at as establishing Stockholm as a global player in the field, and also for being the main hub for the AI/ML community in Stockholm, because generally we know that there is so much knowledge exchange and there is so much growth opportunities for us as individuals, and it's really important for people to find people with common interests. And we've seen several people moving to Stockholm to work in AI, and then they find a community, and that's really what makes them enjoy working in AI in Stockholm. So that's great. If you take the next slide, please. And basically we have a couple of sponsors. We have Ericsson, who's a diamond partner, and then we have Petaran and Polarmind, and they basically help us doing this. Even more importantly, when we can meet physically, but they really are excellent backers and support what we're doing. So if we take the next slide. So basically how we work towards establishing Stockholm as an AI hub is basically by doing these types of events. And we have different event formats ranging from sort of technical to very, very technical. Recently, some more business oriented too. I would say the meetup is normally what goes under technical. And then we have more sort of workshops and reading groups, which are even more technical. But the meetups are more around practical use and what can be done with AI in practice. So in this case, in agriculture. And just to note that we really encourage our members to take initiatives and arrange events. Like in this case, where Mikhail has led the initiative of pulling off this Agri-tech meetup. And then we really want to sort of help our members do this in an efficient way, so that it's as easy as possible for everyone to activate themselves, or sort of to do stuff in the network. Yeah, and that's I guess the short intro about Stockholm AI. So without further ado, let's jump right into the speakers. Martha.
Yes, perfect. Thank you for the intro, Ingrid. So today we have two talks and three really good speakers with really interesting topics. So we have Mikhail Popov that will start first. He's a senior scientist at RISE, and he will introduce the topic of drone and AI-assisted livestock monitoring. For the second talk, we have Ulf Nordback from EKOBOT and also Polina Kurtser, who is a computer vision researcher. And they will talk about a different application, so challenges in agriculture or otherwise how to make veggies smile to the camera. But let's start with Mikhail first. So the stage is yours.
Thank you, Marta. So I'm a scientist at the Research Institutes of Sweden, and before it was, for my part, it was Agri-robotics. And but originally I am from KTH. I'm a physicist from KTH. I have a PhD in electromagnetic theory from KTH, but that was was almost 20 years ago. So Marta, how much time do I have actually?
Good that you asked. So you have, let's say, 20-25 minutes plus 5 to 10 minutes questions.
Okay.
We have time, yeah.
That's plenty of time, and I try to be brief. So and now it's 17:59. Yes, I guess I need to share my screen to start the presentation.
That would be great.
Yes, I just scroll it to the start, and this will be and share, and try it. I hope you can see now. It must be a nice picture with text, drone and AI assisted livestock monitoring, and with a drone at the upper right side. But
Yes.
can you confirm it so that you see it? So just to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So this work has been done by me and my colleague Rami almost 2 years ago. So, but this problem came from Swedish farmers directly, and they formulated it that they spend sometimes a few hours a day, each day, to look for animals, to collect animals across the farm and get it back to the barn. And so there was a very general question. They just asked, is there anything we can do about it? Okay, it's very good. And so the idea, of course, was to help them to find it so they can save these hours and spend it on something else. And we found a farm, and it was somewhere between Uppsala and Shopping, so in Sweden. So which was our collaborator. It was in Bjelkesta. The name is Bjelkesta Farm. So this is the picture from this farm with real cows. Extremely beautiful. It's a so-called highland cows, and I think about 50-60 of them at that farm. It varies each year. And the interesting thing that it's actually very important to start talking to the problem owners, what kind of problems they have. And they told us many interesting things, in particular that cows, especially when they are giving birth, they run away and hide. And they're very good at it. So they can hide, and even professional farmers can go by just 1 meter away without noticing it. So it's like it immediately gave us the idea of what kind of precision we need to locate the cows which run away. And well, then we started to think how we can actually keep track of the cows. And essentially, there are two ways to doing that. So you can either put an IoT sensor and an Internet of Things, a sensor with a GPS on each cow, and keep a track on them. And but this solution has some problems. In particular, that if you try to scale it up, you will have many sensors which need to be like waterproof. You need to change batteries. You need to have infrastructure to collect information from the sensors. You cannot put it on the wild animals, because tracking wild animals was also as a part of a wish list from the farmers. So we eventually thought that having a drone is a better solution. And especially the interest was, is it possible to actually construct the complete pipeline? So we collect images from drones and we let the algorithm find the animals, and how good it's going to work or not good. So that was essentially a proof of concept project. To see whether the whole concept of using drones to find cows, as soon we will see, they're not only in the open landscape, they also can hide behind the trees. Is it a good idea or not? So the first question, because to check, was actually how good are essentially pictures taken from the drone, especially videos and still pictures, and apparently because the drones know it vibrates, and the problem, we were a little bit worried that the quality was not good enough. But this is a video of it's maybe a little bit not smooth enough, but I was told the quality even via Zoom is good, so you can see them very, very well. So even the small horns and so on. So that was promising. So that is, if we can find by our bare eye, so there is a good chance that the algorithm can do the same and find these animals instead of us. I need somehow to leave this slide. I think this. Okay, but then the next question was, if they are not in the open landscape, and often farms have forests, and they kind of go behind the trees. Can we see them? Well, and there we hope that we can use both an RGB camera, it's to the left, and also an infrared camera. It's not an error. It should be red and yellow, as you can see. And so the question was which one is better? And the conclusion is that actually you need to combine the information from both of them in particular to get the best result, because it's absolutely the same picture synchronized to the left and to the right. It's just to the left we see it in the visible light, just a regular picture, but to the right in the infrared. As you can see carefully that in the white circle you can see there is an animal which we can easily see on the infrared image, but we cannot see it easily on the RGB, on the visible light image to the left. But there is also an opposite situation. So you can see the red circle, which circles a cow, which you can see on the RGB image, but you cannot see anything on the infrared image. So that kind of gives an idea that ideally, if possible, you should combine this information together. Well, when we filmed it, it was the start of June, and it was probably the first very warm day. It was more than 25 degrees. And it was 2019, in the days when we were still able to travel. So, the interesting thing that it's again the same picture. To the left, it's in the visible light, and to the right is in the infrared. So you can actually see that infrared sometimes doesn't work very well at all. So, because I think, if I remember correctly, the cow has about 38 degrees Celsius body temperature. and the terrain gets sometimes a bit colder, sometimes a bit warmer when it's a warm day. So, and then basically you cannot see anything on the infrared image. So it's not of much of help, as we hoped so. We did somewhat later runs in the cold weather, and in the cold weather that was by far more using an infrared camera was by far more useful. But when it's warm, it showed that it's not that efficient as we hoped for. So then was the time to choose the algorithm. And in this, by that time, we made this project. So the faster RCNN, it was not the fastest, but it was kind of had a good balance between performance and speed. It's a object detection algorithm. We can call it a computer vision algorithm. And if you are not familiar with that, it works approximately as follows. So it's when you train it to recognize objects, it converts known objects like dog in this case to a vector. And then the cat will be another vector, the person will be a third vector, and so on. So, and if assume that you have a trained algorithm that essentially it scans the new image it sees in a special way and try to see whether there is a kind of a match for a vector, there's a similarity what it sees in the scanning window. If there is a match for a dog, for example, or for a cat or for any other object. So and following some criteria and normally at certain threshold, it decides, okay, here I have found a dog. So and the result of this algorithm is essentially two things. It's your frame around the animal, your coordinates where it is, and also a label. In this case, it's a dog. So in our experiment, we have limited hours to cows, and we had bigger plans, but the resources were not sufficient, so we limited us to cows. But it is possible to classify it different animals, for example, cows, sheep, and horses. Okay, how do you normally proceed? With this, you do need to tell the algorithm who the animals are and where they are on the number of pictures. And this process is called annotation. So essentially you use a special tool. When you manually by your hand, you draw a square around each cow you has found on the picture. And it's very time consuming, and the quality of your machine learning solution depends very much on that. So it's we annotated this way 700, a bit more than 700 RGB images, and we used roughly 500 of them to train the algorithm and 200 to make a test to validate it, to see how well it performs on the data which is not been trained on. And even though it's always a big question, how many images do you need to achieve a good performance? And in this case, we were surprised that 500 was enough to get very good results. So it has essentially found on the validation images 9 cows of 10. The precision, which is essentially tells you how many false positives you have, it finds you 100 objects and 80 of them are cows and 20 are something else. That was that. So, but in this case, the recall essentially how many of how many cows of those presented in the picture were the most important, and that was almost 90%, which is a good result. So essentially it misses just 1/10 cow. Each 10th cow in the picture. But there is one thing which was actually makes the whole point why we should use computers to do tedious jobs. Because when we will label them, and if you look at this picture, when we will label them, on the right hand side, these are the labels, and this we try to look carefully and find the animals and see where they are, and we missed one. But the train algorithm has found one. It's you can see on the left hand side, it's not the ground truth, it's the algorithm has found it. So essentially a well-trained algorithm performs a better job than a human, because humans get tired, but the computers do not. So essentially we then looked at this left image and essentially found, oh yes, there is a cow. You may see the quality is not good enough because of the oil compressions and so on, but in the original picture we could eventually find the cows which we were not able to find in the first place. So thanks to the algorithm we trained. So far so good. Then we in this project. We didn't implement the whole system design, so it was a pre-study essentially and a field trial. And but there are interesting, the outstanding question, if you really think and would like to do a complete system, that how do you do your solution? Do you need to process images on board? And it's possible today. So you can have relatively, say, quite powerful computers on board. It's called Edge AI. They have this, it means on the edge, or you need to transmit the pictures live from the drone and process it somewhere in the cloud. And there the problem is the communication channel, because if you process it on the drone, then essentially what you need to send is the coordinates of the found animals, which is a very little information. On the other hand, if you would like to send live streams of high resolution videos via the radio channels, this might not work as expected. But this is something which needs to be studied more. Whether it's essentially possible to send pictures in a certain resolution and process them somewhere in the cloud, or do we really need to have an edge processing directly on the drone? The RGB in an art, that's the second question. Well, it's the conclusion of this experiment that we need to use both, but think about if you think about the commercial side, the RGB camera with 20 million pixel resolution costs, say, 10,000 kronor. Infrared with resolution much worse, 500 by 600, costs 100,000 kronor. So there's a substantial, a few orders difference per pixel in the costs of infrared and RGB images. So this is something to keep in mind. So if you really want to do a real system. There is another video. I'm not sure the sound works. We'll try. Somehow I cannot launch the video. It makes a horrible noise when it launches. I mean, and it kind of we had to fly relatively high. So that it kind of if you try to get lower, the animals get scared and try to run away. So and gives you some vibes that they run away and you will be responsible. So it's so it's something it needs to be made somehow less noisy. Today, to perform this search, you need an operator, and that's what makes the whole solution very expensive, even though you process the images and with the help of the machine learning algorithm. It's still very expensive. So ideally, it should be a system which just flies away by itself, finds the animals, send the coordinates to the farmer, and returns back. That would be ideal. And this should be controlled by a very easy command, because Normally, farmers do not have time to study thick manuals and complex interfaces. The business model is a problem essentially, so we only just try to scratch it and essentially, and that's just yet an open question, even because it really a balance of the potential losses and potential costs. So essentially, both of them need to be kind of agree, so to make this thing work in terms of business. So that was more or less it. I would like to thank our drone partners in AMCO and Globe and Jelkaste Gård, who was kind enough to risk the animals in this experiment, but no animals were eventually harmed, so everything went fine. And so, it was a very nice experience, and it was very nice to be there for us people sitting in the office and then go out and see some light. Yeah, so here are my contact details, but I guess the questions can be asked in the chat. Marta?
Yes, thank you very much, Mikhail. Very interesting use case and interesting results. I really liked the warm, how the infrared doesn't work in warm environment, which makes completely sense. We have some questions from the audience to ask you. So there is one question on how did you combine the information from the RGB and IR images for improving object detection?
We didn't. We planned to do that. We had very big plans, but we didn't have the budget for that. So we had to limit us to RGB. And but now we understand if probably we kind of need a combined system, or maybe we just need to switch between two algorithms when it's dark and when it's bright.
All right.
So far, it's just an open question. Yeah.
Good luck with that then. One other question from Gino. How was the AI integrated in the customer's operations? What change did or could the solution bring about for the customer?
Ideally, so the customer does not need to think about the AI at all. So it can be bought as a service, for example. So we can imagine, for example, that without thinking about how it's technically solved, but for example, if the farm is very big, so and you have a drone, you just press the button, look for the animal, and the drone just flies around, finds the animal, and sends you the coordinates. That's more or less it on the high level, the idea how it should work.
Okay, and does this generalize for other livestock as well, or is it easy to generalize?
Yes. We are yet again to make more tests, and it will be very interesting to see how well it can distinguish between different livestock and also the predators. Even though the predators, it's a relatively small percent of the damage they do compared with other stuff, but still, I think about 400 cases in Sweden per year. So the farmers expressed interest that it would be interesting to get early warnings that the predators are closer to that area, for example. Yeah.
Good, very well. One more question then from Alberto. Is the operator problem a legislative limitation?
Yes, would say the rules are changing, and both on the European level and also in Sweden. Since 1st of January, to operate a drone, you need to have go through the education, for example. Then we tried, in our case, it was so what is really difficult is to get a license for non-line of sight flight. So in our experiment, we got lucky. We just limited us to a farm, which was about 2 kilometers by 1 kilometer. So it was always line of sight. We used a drone, which didn't need any licensing. It was below 7 kilos. and then we flew over private garden, private farm. So we got permission to do that, and there were no people there apart the owners and us, so we didn't risk to film any people essentially. So we kind of, in this case, we went around all these potential problems, but it's very, very true. As soon as you start to film, and there are other areas which are not part of the agreed area, and you have use a heavy drone, and if you non-line of sight, so there can be many issues to solve. Yes, that's correct.
All right. And have you run any benchmark on how this algorithm perform versus humans? You mentioned this example of this picture that the humans cannot see, but is that something that you have justified somehow?
No, we noticed that. I mean, that we, especially when the difficult situation, then when the cows are behind the trees. So it's, for us, it's very difficult. So we needed to provide ground truth ourselves for the algorithm to be trained, and we did our best, but we still missed. But the algorithm found it. So, but we didn't collect enough statistics. How many human errors? You need many humans, many conditions, and many different situations to collect enough statistics. But I guess it can be common.
Yeah, makes sense. Another question from Carl. Have you looked at the possibility to implement this for reindeer farmer? As the distances and area is larger there, there might be a larger need for this.
We didn't specifically look to implement it for the reindeer, but that would be a very interesting project for us, because it's kind of, we can take this as a start and extend it to fly longer, to have the train algorithm train on reindeers, which we do not have now, for example. So and reindeers, it sounds cold, so we should be able to use infrared camera as well. So yes, so it's we haven't done it, but it would be very interesting project to do.
All right, then good luck with that as well.
Thank you.
We have a lot of questions actually, and we have a couple of more minutes, so I'll
go ahead. Yes,
a couple of more. So how did you guys do your experiments initially? Who were the early adopters?
The early adopters of the technology?
I assume, yes.
Well, it's just us. I mean, we try to match the problem coming from the farmer side to the technology we have. So, and say, this is a solution we have, but there are many aspects which needs to be solved. But parallel, it's a very useful exercise, because there are other formulations, other problems which farmers formulate, they would like to get answers to. So I would say at least 2 years ago, there were no early adopters. And probably if you look now, so there may be some use one way or another of drone technology combined with computer vision and so on in different aspects. But it changes every day, so yeah.
Great. And then let's see. You mentioned the summer. Then we have another question. How did the algorithm perform during the autumn when the cows could camouflage with its surrounding?
We didn't test it in the autumn, so we used the set of data which was which we did in the summer. So, but we would expect to make a better use of infrared cameras when it's autumn, because in that case it's much better, you know, the contrast the animals appear on infrared cameras is much better, so you can much more clear see animals in infrared compared to the summertime. Yeah,
right. Then you couldn't use an RGB RGB data, but infrared would work in that case. Whereas
Yeah.
in the summer, it might be the opposite.
Yes, there are many aspects which to be considered, which we haven't considered yet. So
Yeah.
it's very exciting.
Yes, absolutely. And then one question on the model, how do you evaluate the model in terms of precision, etc., and other metrics?
We just not ourselves, but we had a very okay. It depends on who is asking. If it's a very specific person, there might be some needed details, but you know, we didn't care how much the overlap with the ground truth was. So that threshold was set relatively low. So, but then essentially we counted, I don't remember exactly the threshold for the probability for identification exactly, but we essentially counted the true amount of animals, the ground truth, and also the amount of those which algorithm has found. So this was a number of animals which algorithm has found, a number of animals which the ground truth which we have found. We just divided that. So it was for the recall. For the precision, there were some square boxes around items which were not the cows. So that gave us the precision. So essentially counted and gave us counted the average over the all images.
Okay. And final then question from Alberto, could a multispectral camera improve the detection?
Yes, it depends. The problem is I mentioned that the matrices for example infrared cameras, they are much poorer resolution. The general answer is yes, but it's very difficult. It should be because you get more information, but then with it, whether it will be an improvement, that's difficult to say. It needs to be tested. But in theory, getting more information is useful. So if you cannot see something in RGB, you probably can see it in the infrared or probably in some other bands. So yes.
Great. But thank you very much, Mikhail, for your talk. That has been very interesting and informative. So good luck with your next steps and finding other livestock as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
So then with that, we can move to the next talk. So we have two presenters here. We have Ulf Nordback, founder and CEO of EKOBOT. And then also Polina Kurtser, who is a computer vision researcher, and they're going to talk a little bit about EKOBOT, but then the application, which is sensing challenges in agri-robotics, or how to make veggies smiles on camera. So Ulf, you are going to start this presentation, so the stage is yours.
Thank you. So you hear me clear and loud, I hope?
Yes.
Excellent. Right. Let's see. If we can share. Okay. Yeah, my name is Ulf Nordback. I'm the founder and the CEO of EKOBOT. And it would have been nice to proceed.
We could see the screen before.
Yeah. Let's try again. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it would be nice if the screen sharing worked nice.
So we can see the screen, but it's not in presentation. Now it's in presentation mode.
Okay. Okay, yeah, so here we go. Yeah, as I said, my name is Ulf Nordback. I'm a founder of EKOBOT, and I started EKOBOT in 2017, and I managed to get funding from Jordbruksverket that supports new initiatives within agriculture to try out ideas how to improve and bring efficiency into some area within agriculture. And I made a suggestion about how to improve and get precision into handling weeds in row-grown vegetables. So in 2017, we got this funding and we built this little prototype here. It's actually in the backyard of my colleague, and it follows and detects rows of the yellow onion, the keppa leek. And here you see a little blue camera. It is actually a contribution from our one of the project partners, Unibap. So we formed this project together with Unibap, Rice, and HERE. Probably, yeah, you know all about Rice already. And HERE are advisors. They give advice to farmers. And we built this prototype. It finds and detects weeds and crops, and it moves a little tool to remove it. And Jordbruksverket was very happy with our first results and decided to give us more funding so we could use all our 9 million kronor. And therefore we continued and built a full-size prototype. You see a little image here. The first one was a 6-wheeler and the second one a 4-wheeler. And then up till today, we have continued to develop and employed more engineers and got more funding. As you might know, we are today a public company that we really need to be to get more funding and accelerate to go into production phase. So this year we are actually out in the fields and do pilot tests at some of the biggest farmers in Sweden. Yeah, and I couldn't resist to show our vision, our the design of a robot we are aiming at, but later on, maybe later on. But it's fully functional. We have tested out everything, so it's fully buildable, but later on. So what are we doing? Looking at the agriculture area today, they have lots of challenges. It's not only that the use of tractors are one of the biggest contributors of emissions of CO2. I got this from a VSP report. Actually, it's more than 30% we realized, because tractors are used in so many other areas apart from agriculture. So it's actually an entrepreneur also. So it's a big contributor. And also the farmer needs to put in man hours. He needs to sit on the tractor. He needs his tools for putting fertilizer, water on the plants. And to get the plants growing and prevent damages from insects and weeds, he often needs to deploy herbicides, that is spraying chemicals on the fields. And even though he has all these tools in hand and machinery, there's always needs for some manual labor to do weeding, and that is remove the weeds that are still there. So all this together drives the cost for organic farming. And if you go to the supermarket, you see that still today the organic products like sugar or wheat or whatever are substantially more expensive. So I decided to try to do something about that. So therefore, together with my project partners, I started to figure out, is there technology that can solve this? The capacity of computers, vision system, algorithms, and AI can always together be put into a machine that addresses all this, as I mentioned, getting rid of or decrease the usage of herbicides, decrease the use of tractors, and decrease the use of manual labor. All these are factors that are really important for the farmers today to bring more efficiency into the farm. And yeah, I found out we can do it if we can approach, if we can improve the way the weeds are removed. So what we at EKOBOT does, we have our unique selling point is that we can control and remove and move a tool extremely close to the crop and the weed. And we can follow a regular path. So if this is the weed and this is the crop, the weed can be placed beside, in between the crops, and it can be placed irregular. So that's one of our unique selling points, let's say. We can control a tool with millimeter precision, and at the same time have you can call it a barrier around the crop. So we don't want to move too close to the crop, because we can damage the root system and therefore decrease the yield. So that's what we have done. We have built a camera system, encapsulated it so it can resist moisture and rain and so on, and look at the veggies and find the unwanted weeds and move tool system exactly to the weeds without damaging the crop. So that is the challenge. The yellow onion we're working with now, the kepalik, is extremely sensible. So you want to avoid even touching it, because then you can open up for diseases. And the root system is also very sensible. And finally, the biggest challenge is that the crops grow very narrow. It can come down to centimeters, and you understand, not damaging the crop, you need to have a tool system that can move really exactly. So today is our goal is to demonstrate the system with the pilots today, and it works very well. We have a patent filed for our tool system, and accelerating the productification with our new money got from the Nasdaq introduction. And yeah, important to mention is that while we are out there, we have a camera system. You see our robot here in the fields, grabbing a lot of images. And of course, we will use those. We are doing real-time analysis, finding the crops and the weeds, but we can transmit the information to offline analysis. For example, looking for particular insects and different patterns on the leaves. And all this together creates a new way to create a decision support system for farmers. Because precision farming is all about getting more information, getting more data points from our robot, analyzing the images, and also from sensors distributed all around the fields. Yeah, and my final image before leaving the word to Polina is that, yeah, onions is a small crop in Sweden, but looking at Holland, they have 21% of the total onion export. So there's a huge market in onion, but onion is the first crop we start with, and we are continuing with other crops soon. And before leaving, asking Polina to present herself, our main focus is outdoor system, row-grown vegetables, but we got a request from Avala, who is running another EIP project that aims to improve getting more data, increasing the data points and improving the decision support for greenhouse grown vegetables. And that's what Polina are going to talk to. And they also have a need for robotics systems that move around and collects data. So thank you very much. I'm leaving the word to you, Polina, to talk about our indoor, the greenhouse area of EKOBOT. Thank you.
Thank you, Ulf. Until Polina joins and shares her screen, one message to all of the attendees. Go to slido.com. You can use the code #U693. You can also see it in our chat here in Zoom, and ask your questions to both Ulf and Polina, and we'll answer them later.
Sure.
There we are. I hope you can hear me and see me.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you all for the introduction. Indeed, what I want to try to use the time that we have left is to talk about a bit more of the challenges in the computer vision algorithms to build these kind of systems like we've talked about. And as mentioned before, I'm more in the, let's say, in the crops, in the greenhouse crops or orchards. Therefore, what I wanted to do is to use this time to talk to you on how you basically set up a system and what kind of challenges for the vision algorithms are out there, or as mentioned before, how do you make veggies smile to the camera? In a second about me, so I hold a PhD from Ben Gurion University in Israel, where I specialize in agri-robotics and vision and planning algorithms. Currently, I'm in two hats. I'm a researcher at the Hebrew University, and I'm also involved at EKOBOT as a computer vision advisor. And therefore, what I want to start with is basically maybe give you a short overview of the state of the art of where sort of agri-robots are today in general, and where did this start with. So maybe the first thing to look back is to think about that sometime in the beginning of the 90s, there was this hype of thought that we can build these fully autonomous systems that would roam around the field and do all these hard operations that people don't really like doing, harvesting and pruning and seeding and basically doing all those manipulations in there right in the field, and they would be really smart, they will be able to do it autonomously. So there were these prototypes that were mostly a vision out there and sketches of how this can look like. And of course, in the last, 30 years now, this vision progressed quite a lot. And one of the reasons is because it's one of the industries that really demand these kind of algorithms to be implemented straight into the application, because there are less and less working hands that are willing to do the work, and more and more food needs. So these systems are not just fun and not just smart, they're also just very much needed. Otherwise, we'll be out of food soon. Therefore, that really jumpstart this development of different algorithms, different robots, that are a proof of concept robots, but they're really, really close to the market right now. So you heard Ulf talking about EKOBOT, the weeding robot. There are apple harvesters in New Zealand that are really close to market, and farmers are showing the proof of concept there. There are grape harvesting and pruning or robots in France. There are many more. This is just examples. And they're all very, very close. And one of these robots I was involved in the building. This was, it's called a sweeper robot. It's a pepper harvesting robot in greenhouses. And I think what I wanted to show you is a short video CNBC covered us that I think will give us a good introduction to talking about maybe the challenges there. The video goes on and on there with more details, and I provided the link below, but you basically saw the kind of environment that we need to work in. And you probably saw also the statistics in the end, where the state-of-the-art robot in harvesting right now is capable to harvest a pepper in 24 seconds per pepper and 60% results. Now, this is the state-of-the-art. This is better than the previous ones, but this, you can basically understand why there is a challenge of bringing these robots right now into actual commercial applications. So the proof of concepts is out there, but how do you increase the efficiency of these robots to actually provide robust operation in the field, and how to take these algorithms to the next step where you can call this a product? So there were a few identified bottlenecks in the literature. I will not talk, of course, about all of them, because most of my interest, or most of the work I did, was on the detection algorithms and the vision algorithms. And there you basically talk about the fact that there is an advancement in the detection of taking an image and being able to kind of find the objects in it, the classical computer vision problem. But when a farmer says that he needs 95% operation for this harvester, for example, to be commercially applicable for him to buy the robot, he actually means, or she, 95% of the fruit in the field or vegetable, not 95% of the true positive, not precision, not recall, not these numbers, not compared to labeling, but actual physical ground truth information, which means that if the collection of data that we did for the pepper said that the human eye can only see 40 to 60% from images, we have a serious problem. Now, why is there a problem with the visibility? Here, I just want to give you an example. I want you to take a look at this image that was taken by a robot and try to find all the peppers in it that you think that should be harvested in this case, for example. Well, I think you found this one pretty quickly. This one is probably also not that hard to find. But then you also need to find this one, which is maybe you found, maybe you're not, and this one, and this one. That was quite hard. I needed to look at that image for quite some time to find this one, and that one, and that one. So in other ways, not only that the labeler will probably miss quite a lot of them, we can't really expect the system to be able to find these kind of very occluded fruits. And we need to find ways to cope with this, cope with both the lighting and the occlusion situation that we have in these kind of conditions when we build computer vision systems. So I want to talk about a bit how we try to solve these kind of problems. So let's start with the lighting. The first thing that you think about when you want to enhance the lighting is that you bring artificial lighting in. You don't fight the system, you don't try to build an algorithm that just solves it all. You actually come up with, well, LED light and try to solve it. So here's an example on the left with natural light. Here's an example that we do with a flashlight, and you can see that it's quite better. You're missing quite a lot of the data here on the sides. In this case, we did a very short exposure time, so most of the image is quite black. But it doesn't solve, for example, all sorts of light bulbs that are in here that you also often get as misdetections. So we come up with the solution. We called it the flash no flash. It's a methodology where we take 2 frames in a row, one without a flash and one with, and we subtract one from another to get these kind of even colors. So we get an image that is with a flash, without a flash, and then by subtracting, we can get rid of everything that our light couldn't overcome. And we can get much more uniform results, and therefore help our algorithm with better data to search for our targets in this case. So this would be one method to cope maybe with these kind of light conditions, the method that we came up with and published and we're very happy about and increased our performance. But of course, this kind of environment can bring you quite interesting questions sometimes. So you would sort of train your system on this, and then I don't know how many of you saw this a news article at SVT about the south and northern lights in Trelleborg, where the greenhouse that we actually work with, the tomato greenhouse, EKOBOT, has employed a new lighting system, new LED, to help the plants, the tomato plants, grow in the winter. So all of a sudden you have this crazy disco light in here that goes all the way to the sky. And your algorithm needs to, or your robot or your system needs to kind of scan these tomato plants and detect whatever you're trying to detect. In our case, it's tomato flowers and actual tomatoes. And it's scary, it's actually 5 meters high. But besides that, you can see how maybe some of your training data needs to be retrained, or some of your lighting system becomes much more important to be able to adjust to the conditions that you will be working in. So there's a lot of this. What I'm trying to say is that besides building a great vision algorithm, which is the go-to of just let's take a network and try to detect and train data, we might want to also provide a hardware solution to cope with these problems, to be able to provide better data for the training, for the algorithm that is trained and tested later for detection. Another example for this kind of hardware solutions is that, for example, we had a vineyard robot. So in vineyards, it's quite important for the farmer to be able to know and expect how many grapes and what's the size of the grapes that is expected to be produced at the end of the season. So having a robot that would navigate through the vineyard and be able to detect the grapevines is of a need. But it's not enough to just detect them. You actually need their physical size, because you need to know how many kilos of grapes you would get, not necessarily how many bunches you would get. And as a result, that means that you all of a sudden need to bring in depth data, because you need kind of physical size. And in that case, usually you say RGBD, and maybe some of you who had their experience with RGBD data knows that sensors fails the moment you take them outside, because the light just the light interferes with the operation of the sensor. So in this case, for example, one of the things that helped us solve is the fact that the technology of RGBD has developed. And all of a sudden, RGBD cameras today, specifically the RealSense cameras today, can actually cope with these kind of conditions and can create a full depth into register data with RGB and be able to give you quite some meaningful data where you can detect and actually get physical size of your cluster system. And so on. So that's a solution where sometimes you just, need to wait till somebody invents a better sensor for you to work with. Of course, this kind of sensor doesn't solve everything. I didn't have much of the time here, but you can see that the detailed information here is very, very low, which means that maybe grape clusters you can detect. But if I would want to say something about the size of the stems within the bush and so on, would be much more problematic. So still work in progress that needs to be solved of what kind of sensors and how to help them to provide us more meaningful information. Okay, so that was quickly on how to take care of the lighting. Really quickly, I'll also talk about how we take care of occlusions, right? Because sometimes you just can't look through. So some of the sensors might help us, as we saw from Mikhail's lecture as well, that sometimes we can look through with IR or thermic, but sometimes we just want to actually look from the other direction, right? If I would just turn the camera around, I might get to see this pepper as opposed to from this viewpoint. So what we did was to go into these kind of greenhouses and collect these vast data that will give us prior probabilities of detection of how much do I see from the actual targets that we expect from different directions. That's where the 40 to 60% number came from. We get this prior probability, and then we can build based on this prior probability. We can analyze an image, see how many targets we managed to detect, what is the level of our occlusion, and basically create a prediction model or a Bayesian prediction model in this case, to be able to predict how much more information am I missing. So if I have, for example, I detected 3 peppers, but usually I'm supposed to detect 5 or 6 for this variety from one image, and I have high occlusion level, that means I probably should look from another side. But if I detected a lot and my occlusion level was low, maybe I shouldn't waste my time searching more and try to just harvest them and continue. Last but not least, how else you can take care of visibility? Well, this is an example of harvesting of strawberries. This is how the classical way is. It's quite hard. You bend over all the time, and it's really hard to see all the strawberries. And what the classical ways of solving these kind of issues, and also maybe the robotic system that we tend to build, look somewhat like this, where you kind of try to build your system around the situation where you're in, right? You would get the best detection algorithms. You will lay down a guy in this case that he will be more comfortable to just go through it, but you will not change the setup. For some reason, when we talk about agricultural applications, we don't try to change the environment. We always try to build the best algorithm, the best robot to take care of that. Well, I don't know. I had the fun of harvesting commercial strawberries in this case, where they actually thought about it a bit differently. What they did was they placed the railings of the strawberry harvesting on top, higher than the in this case a human, but in this image of a robot. And therefore you have the strawberries just hanging down ready to be picked. So you solve both problems, both the physical problem, the robotic one, but also very much the vision. Because agree with me that finding these kind of conditions, finding the strawberries is by far easier than if you would try to find them in the classical way. So sometimes we actually need to work with the plant scientists below just a shallow collaboration of finding applications, but into designing the plants to actually help us have better vision algorithms. There is a great work by Alberto Dorigoni, in apple orchards. So they designed apple trees to look like that instead of an apple tree, not the regular ones that you see. So maybe they are not as visually appealing, but you can agree that the vision algorithm will be, and the harvesting robot will have much more fun harvesting this than trying to find them in regular ones. So sometimes you just need to also think outside the box before you're applying your great vision algorithm. That was me.
Great, thank you so much, Polina. Very interesting presentation from both you and Ulf. So we have a couple of questions for you then. So the first question is, how does the robot navigate and avoid the crops? I think that also goes to Ulf's presentation where he mentioned the sensitive crops.
Yes, we use a combination. We use, of course, GPS, RTK GPS to get out in the fields. And we also, now I'm trying to find the English word, dödräkning, yeah. we get the input from the wheels, how fast we're turning, how long we have been moving. And in combination, we put this into a kind of Kalman filter. And altogether we get a very good position of where we are. And then we combine it with the image system, that follows the crops and actually can, with depth sensor technology, can give a very precise distance from the tools to the crop, even though we are actually moving. So it's a quite complex system that take into account lots of parameters. But a combination of vision and onboard sensors. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, I think it does. Are there any off-the-shelf models for detecting crops, or do you have to train new ones for each crop? How many images are needed roughly for a decent model?
There are off-the-shelf algorithms. I think we should let Polina, who is our scientist, answer which models.
But the thing is with these models, I mean, we are not inventing the shop. So you basically try two ways. If you have enough data, and by enough we are talking about thousands of images, because you can use pre-trained models, but you need a lot of information, because let's say the typical models that we have today are not trained on this kind of data. It's not very available, this kind of greenhouse data, and usually you need to have a lot of transfer learning. So you don't start from scratch, but you still need thousands of images, especially since, let's say, a weed in one field is not the same weed in another, and and the conditions are very different and so on. So you still need a lot of data, even if we don't sort of start from scratch and invent the next network, or just from completely untrained network. So that's on that side. We also in parallel try in many cases to create algorithms that are not model based. So we would, since we are many times limited by the amount of time, many times a blob detection or something simplified by when you're adding a serious hardware behind it and a setup that is homogeneous would work in some way more robust than a model that requires a lot of data. So there we are actually starting from scratch. This is tailoring features and trying to kind of solve the problem from scratch.
Yeah, true.
All right. There is one related question. I think that you have addressed it already, but if you have something to add here, what kind of machine learning models you use for detection?
Well, it goes either, as I said, in the feature clustering, we try more advanced supervised clustering methods in a way that work on different features. And if it's networks, then it's going for the sort of state of the art of the technology, either some sort of a YOLO, or if we have the ability, it would be some NASCAR CNN or some classic methods. You also need to think about sort of heaviness of the system. So if we think about the greenhouse operations, then you have a strong base. You can put a big computer on top. You're not worried about sort of battery. You have electric connections and so on. If you're trying to solve that almost on a drone, then you need something much more lightweight, and then you might go with a bit different networks.
All right. One more question then. Do you use ROS? I don't know what that is, but I assume you do.
ROS. Well, for research, for sure. I mean, this is the ROS is the robotic operating system. This is sort of the research platform for writing, for integrating, let's say, a lot of different models in robotics. And yeah, a lot of our work is based on ROS in a way, of course.
So we have time for one more question quickly. I will just pick one here. Can you spend a few words about non-machine learning methods for detection, what you mentioned earlier, Polina?
I don't mean specifically not machine learning. I just mean more classical machine learning, as in, working with the actual color information and trying to work on the morphology and feature adjustments. So it's still machine learning. Maybe I should have corrected myself. It's just more, it's deep learning kind of before the era of putting everything in the network kind of algorithm. So any kind of k-means and clustering and all these things you studied in your computer science first year kind of courses.
Great. So that's it for today, guys. Thank you very much for your presentations. I'm gonna ask one more question to the audience. You can still get in slide and answer our feedback poll. You can find the link and the hashtag code in the chat here. So do that. Tell us what you think about the event. Give us some ideas of what to do next. I will be happy to chase them. And again, thank you all the presenters for today. Thank you all for attending, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marta.